You're live on the Regional Media Podcast Network.
Let's get down to business.
The Discussion with local media trailblazer Fletcher Ford, featuring special guest Darren Brown.
We're going to discuss it right now.
If you want to be successful locally, you have to get your butt out of bed and put in the work.
Yeah, I know. The guy's really good.
Yeah, he's so sharp he probably cut himself smiling.
The Discussion, local helping local.
All right, this is my show, and it's a serious intellectual hour of discussion, and I want to keep it that way.
That's what I'm talking about, baby! Woo!
Fletcher has access to some of the highest performing people in small business today.
We're talking about a lot of money here.
That sounds so good.
This guy has connections. Fletcher Ford, featuring special guest Darren Brown.
What the you two talking about?
You know what I'm talking about, right?
And now, The Discussion.
Welcome to The Discussion. I'm host Fletcher Ford with my trusty sidekick, Darren Brown, and we are welcoming Jimmy Failla today. Jimmy is host of Fox Across America, a stand-up comedian, and an all-around crazy dude. Jimmy, welcome.
Yeah, well, what a time to be alive. Honestly, and I didn't know Darren Brown was going to be on this. I would have ironed my T-shirt. I had no idea. I'm putting this broadcast on my resume. But isn't it kind of funny, Fletch, that we are doing so much remote broadcasting these days? Like my show, Fox Across America, launched on March 9th of last year. And the whole premise of the show, Fox Across America, we're going to be doing the show live all over the country. And within 5 days, it became Fox Across Zoom. And we were just hanging out, just the way I dreamt it up as a little kid. I remember telling my teacher in first grade that someday I'd get a nationally syndicated talk show and host it from a spare bedroom in my house. I always dreamt it up this way. Mrs. Chimenti, I'll show you. I'm going to turn my closet into a recording studio, lady. We'll see who's laughing then. And that has very much been the reality of our lives. And the show now starting to get back to normal. But I will tell you, and I want your opinion on this too. Did you guys go in the beginning of lockdown to any of those Zoom cocktail parties?
No, because I'm not a dumbass.
Well, hey, I did host one with all of our GMs and salespeople.
Stop it.
So all these guys are drinking beer on my dime. All right, on, nice.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, definitely.
You see,
you might have even paid for it.
I never went to one because I just always assumed I was going to log on and it was going to be an intervention. Like my family was going to be like, Jimmy, you RSVP'd yes to an 8 o'clock in the morning cocktail party. I thought it was going to be one of those. So I never went, but I knew it was a thing. And I was fascinated by how people tried to adjust to that, like make it a part of their lives and then just quit. They were like, no, we're not doing it.
They just gave up.
Because I haven't been invited to one of those since maybe like last May was around when people quit. Right, Darren?
Yeah, I think so. It sounds about right.
Good.
They were
well. Now that I've completely corrupted the beginning of the show, I will dish the rock back to you. Nice to be here.
Yeah, great. We're glad you're here. Tell us a little bit about how you got your start in being such a funny ass comedian.
Oh wow. Honestly, I really did learn humor as a survival skill growing up because I was the youngest of 4 kids, a big police household. Back when you really were allowed to beat your kid, your older brothers beat you up. And honestly, I had a pretty funny family, but I learned to kind of deploy humor as a way of like, 1, getting my way, but 2, not getting just thrown around the house. Like I was playing in one of the toughest divisions in sports because everybody grew up to be like a tough roughneck, strong cop. And, I was kind of a doof. So I always had comedy as, a survival skill in my house, a social skill, because I was a pretty fat kid growing up, which like a T-shirt in the pool kid, which by the way, to any of the fat kids listening,
you said T-shirt
you're better off owning you're fat than you are putting on a T-shirt, because the T-shirt, when it gets wet, it clings to you and it makes you look worse. Like a T-shirt on a fat person, it looks worse. Take it from a guy who's worn. But comedy was always like, it was a superpower in that I probably growing up dated like 4 or 5 weight classes in prestige above my head because girls kind of thought I was fun to be around, and I did pretty well for myself. And when comedy took me into business, I had kind of like always known I wanted to do stand-up, and I started doing stand-up and driving a taxi in New York City. And in New York City, of course, comedy is there to like relieve the tension in traffic because you don't want anybody to stab you in the neck with a screwdriver because you made a wrong turn on 39th Street. But the weird thing is, after driving a cab for 2 years, you're hoping someone will stab you and kill you. It's like you evolve. Your standard does evolve. But yeah, I started off.
I'm sure you get a lot of good stories from being in cabs. You probably used a lot of that in your sets, didn't you?
Yes, I talked a lot about. I have a stand-up special that's on Amazon Prime. Not to sandwich board and self-promote too much, but if one of you were to watch State of the Union with Jimmy Failla, I would get a 10-cent royalty from Jeff Bezos. So take off the apron, Jimmy Failla. We are going out tonight, girl. It is going to get rowdy.
I don't know if Bezos can afford that.
Yeah,
man.
but if you know of my stand-up special and you're still friends with me, that's a big deal. You get comeback credit for that. But no, loved comedy, and yeah, that's how I started off. I was driving a cab doing stand-up comedy in the city.
I saw an old YouTube video where you were doing like a Cars for Coffee thing or something. It was funny as hell because you're riding this bike around and you just look like a complete idiot. Do you remember that?
I was riding a bicycle around?
Yeah, see, you don't even remember that.
Fletcher, I got to be honest. I have had some real dicey representation through the years. So God knows what might be out there with like my likeness on it. Like this is a funny story. There was a mobile app called the Flips mobile app. And essentially what it was like a Roku or one of those devices you put on your TV that allowed you to stream what was on your phone on your TV. You follow me so far?
Yeah.
Well, I signed a deal to portray the mascot, which was called the Flips Fairy. And it was me, 6'1", 235 pounds, in a pink fairy costume with giant fairy wings, skin-tight leotard. Well, anyway, this is what you do. The rent don't pay itself. You know what I mean? You got to play the teams on the schedule. So I say yes to this deal, and I sign what's called a national buyout. And what a national buyout means is they're giving you a flat rate to be in this ad campaign, but they can essentially do whatever they want with it nationally without owing you any extra money, okay? So they give you what you think is really good money as somebody just breaking into the business, and in exchange, you give them, license to do anything. So the long and short of it is that I think I'm starring in like 3 internet commercials, and within a week of signing that deal, I am literally getting, and I'm with no exaggeration, 50 calls a day from around the country from people I know who are seeing me on the back of semi-trailers on interstates with my picture as the Flips Fairy. They put me on 100 trucks. They did 100 truck buy around the country. And it got to the point that me and my family were driving to Ohio to meet my wife, because my wife is from Ohio. And we're on Route 80, and my son spots me on the back of a truck in a fairy costume. And that's as good of a time as a dad will ever have to give his kid the speech about staying in school. You know what I'm saying? I was like, now look, Lincoln, you study hard. Not good.
What?
But yes. So you say bicycle. I might have been on a bicycle. I can't promise you. I don't confirm nor deny the allegation.
Now we've got to go find this fairy picture now.
Oh yeah.
It's out there.
Already.
Darren's already looking for it. What's
great.
So tell me about how your relationship began with Fox.
Oh wow. So I was doing stand-up at a club here in the city, the Gotham Comedy Club. That club had a TV show called Gotham Comedy Live, and it was on Access TV, which is a network co-owned by Mark Cuban and Ryan Seacrest. And they had a TV show that I would appear on probably like once or twice a season, but I was also the head monologue writer for the show. So what that meant is every week a new celebrity would host the show who wasn't a comic, and it would be my job to write their monologue and turn them into a comic in a week. So people like William Shatner, David Hasselhoff, Pamela Anderson, like interesting people, but they weren't comics. So anyway, while I was in the process of doing that, one of the bookers for the Kennedy show, Kennedy, the MTV VJ, my good friend who comes on my show all the time, and I go on her show. One of the bookers saw me on that TV show and asked me to come by and do Kennedy's show the next day. And I did it the next day. And then I just became like a regular on-air guest after that, where I was on like once a week. And then they eventually asked me to leave the show I was writing for and become the head writer for her show. And then that got me, the term is in the building. That got me in the building at Fox, where you are now like around every day. And when somebody walks around in the building at Fox with like my energy and attitude, they just assume I'm there breaking thumbs for the bookmaker. Like, somebody didn't, I'm running the company office pool or something. So I got into the building and basically just walked around in a series of very loud sport coats because it made people think I knew what I was doing. It was a confidence game.
It's interesting because I follow Kennedy's show too, and it seemed like around that time it kind of changed dynamic a little bit too, which is probably has a lot to do with your writing. So the radio show and has that kicked off? When did you guys start, and kind of how fast is it growing and all that?
I mean, right now, like we've kind of hit the stride in that we've picked up about 20 new affiliates in the last 2.5 months. Because we're finally able to like market the show. Like when we launched it on March 9th of last year, everything kind of shut down. There weren't like any in-person seminars, not any conventions. We weren't doing any like what we would call market visits. Like our plan in the coming year is to work out a market visit with every single station that carries the show, which in this case would be, I would think if you totaled live broadcast and delayed broadcast, almost like 70 stations. So we would be at, probably all of them for at least 1 or 2 broadcasts in the coming year if, people are okay with it in that market. And it's, kind of now really picking up speed. And the reason being is I think our politics, I obviously lean a ways to the right, but I think our politics have gotten so toxic that by default, they created a big market opening for a show like mine, which is obviously covering all the big grown-up topics, but doing it from a really easy to digest standpoint. You know what I'm saying? Like if you listen to my show and you don't agree with it, you won't shut it off because you don't feel like I'm trying to like own the lids. I'm not like trying to like conquer. I'm not trying to destroy because, I kind of get America as a guy who started off driving a cab. I kind of get that everybody's really lucky to live here. So I kind of see my show as more of a pro-America show than a pro-Republican show. Even though I lean to the right, I want to see everybody in the country get how lucky they are to live here, because I think we'd actually get back to a much healthier place. I don't know if you guys noticed, but everybody hates each other right now.
Everybody's
like,
so
I hate you too. I can't stand you guys. Like, I'm done with it.
Everybody's so pissed off, and some days it's like, man, just get over it.
Okay. Speaking of hating people, though, so what's your favorite guest so far that you've hated so much?
Ooh. Listen, I'll give you a guest that actually impressed me. I always thought that Ted Cruz was a bit of a weenie. Do you know the term weenie? It's like somebody's kind of a jerk a little bit. And I have nothing against Ted Cruz.
You just thought he was a little whiny crybaby.
In kind of following him in the media, thought he was like a little bit of a bozo. And when he was on the show, I was genuinely blown away by what a different human being I was talking to, in terms of like, we were talking about Rocky movies and, frozen drinks and the Houston Rockets and the 1984 NCAA championship game. And it was like, this other dude, and it blew me away. If you want somebody I hated, like flat out hated, the New York Mets manager, Bobby Valentine. Do you guys remember Bobby Valentine, managed the Mets, managed the Red Sox? Just one of the biggest jackasses I've ever met. And I have to explain this to you really quick. Major League Baseball was doing like an initiative when they kicked off the season last year, where they always come to Fox because of Fox Sports and everything like that. And they'll get you like people you had no business talking to. Like, do you want Ken Griffey Jr. on? And I'm like, yeah, of course I want. They'll like, it's a different animal here. They'll get me Ted Williams' head out of the freezer and let me talk to it at the cryogenic lab. Like, we got real pull over here. They got real power behind it. And so Bobby Valentine, I told him a story of when the Yankees were playing the Mets in an interleague baseball game in the year 2000. I was in like a hospitality tent with Bobby Valentine, and we took a picture, and my mom put it up on her fridge. So Bobby Valentine, who's on my show this day, and I tell him, oh, you know, you're the first guest I've ever interviewed who's on my mom's fridge. He took that as, oh, you know, because I'm Bobby Valentine, women think I'm like really hot. She must be like so into me. And was like, but kind of like not rolling with the your mom thinks I'm hot joke, rolling with the, yeah, I'm a big star kid. I get this all the time. Why are you even bothering me with this crap? So anyway, about 6 minutes into the interview, at the point that I really like, I just thought he was coming off so bad and I'd be within my rights to do it. He had asked me, he's like, so, you know, is your mom like a huge Met fan? And I actually like read him his truth. And I was like, no, I'm like, my mom, you know, is a huge Yankee fan. And she thinks you're wildly overrated as a manager. Like you were kind of like a media whore. She kind of thought you were like a media whore. And we put you on our fridge. And then he actually gave it to me. He goes, you know, I got another interview after this. Just so you know. And then I wound up like getting through a minute and letting him go. But that's the only time, honestly, in the history of the show, even if I've had like any Democrat on, a Bloomberg, anybody like that, he was the only one that I really had to give it to. But he deserved it. He was like well within his right.
Anytime you try to break a mom joke, especially.
Yeah, I know, because
that's awesome.
I was giving it to him. But instead of just taking it, like, I was like, you could even say, oh, your mom likes it. I didn't roll with it. I'm like, my mom has no standards. Look at my dad, you know? But he had to take it to like a next level and be like a showbiz star. Like, shut up.
What the hell is wrong with you?
So the general vibe of the show is very much what we're doing here. It's like, whatever's going on in the world, we're talking about it. I kind of have a weird worldview because I drove a cab, and the people who get into a cab are from everywhere in New York. You're picking people up at international airports and stuff like that. And, you know, you're never going to see any of these people again. And what you notice is when you work in that type of scenario, you know, a lot of people do, you know, whether you work at a resort, you work wherever, you know, plenty of people interact on a daily basis if you work with the public with someone you might not see ever again. But the difference in a taxi is it's very intimate. You're sharing a ride for like 20 minutes or 30 minutes. There's an actual like social bond to what goes on if you're actually conversing with them. So you really learn to like deal with people with a level of honesty that's kind of like liberating because you know you're never going to see them again. And because of that, I kind of converse on the show that way too, because chances are I'm never going to see these people again after they hear one episode. They're going to be like, oh, no way. But no, it's very straightforward. And it's very like, you know, we try to make it solutions based, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so many shows now, man. It's like you get home and you listen to the show in the car on the way home, and you get home and you're like, you just instantly want to go in and smack your wife in the face or beat the hell out of somebody because you're all tensed up.
I mean, I say
off.
this about driving a cab. Like, I used to listen to AM radio, and then I started shutting it off because I felt like the emotion, like you just described, is unsustainable. Like, I never feel like I want to hit my wife just because she grew up on a dairy farm and I can't take her. You know what I mean? but if I had one of those, I'm just
She'd
saying,
kick
you
your
know,
ass.
I'm ranked 2 in the coaches poll. I'm ranked 2 in the computer poll in my head. It's so much bile. And what's so frustrating about it is if you're hosting a talk radio show, 99% of your audience agrees with you. So why are you yelling? You know what I'm saying? It's like you're yelling at people who are on your side. This is not preaching to the choir. This is yelling at the people who are filling the collection basket. You know, you're yelling at them. And it's not because of anything they're doing, which makes it even more insane that you're yelling at them. And I started in my cab, and I know this is psychotic, but I used to shut off the radio. And I would drive around monologuing in a taxi, like describing what was going on in traffic. My favorite thing to do would be to do play-by-play of people going into Duane Reade drugstores and telling my imaginary audience why they were going into the drugstore. You know what I mean? So on like a Saturday morning, I'd be like, oh, that guy's aisle 3 cranberry juice. Somebody didn't wear protection last night, like one of those. And it was always like so entertaining. And then the guests would jump in and become the guests, like, you know, the passengers were the guests. And that's how this show that I do now came to be. It's the exact same show, except we're doing a lot more, you know, a lot of grown-up topics. Not as much cranberry juice.
What are some of the highlights? Like, what are some of the highlights that you really like about your show?
You know what? I'll tell you, the best thing is people who hate people like them on my show. So a good example of that is Jim Jordan, Ohio Congressman Jim Jordan.
Yeah.
Every Democrat on earth who has heard him on my show thinks he's the coolest person they've ever met, because he comes on and of course he takes his political positions, but we talk in a way that's very much kind of like it's a better ambassador to who his actual character is. Like he's a Cleveland Browns fan, so I'm always bagging on the Browns. He's a Cincinnati Reds fan, so we're always fighting about the Reds and the Yankees.
Darren's all pissed off about
because
the Cleveland
he
Browns
is
thing.
Technically my wife's congressman in the 4th District of Ohio, where she grew up. So I know a lot about all of like the dirtbag bars he would hang out in growing up and stuff like that. So you get like, it's funny, but like Jim Jordan on my show is like a flunky, like a fun guest who comes on and will let you make fun of him. And believe me, when he steps on the gas and is making a point and is making like a legal point, there's a gear shift and you see this other thing happening because, he has that ability, but he comes off cool. And I think that's been one of my favorite things, is winning people over to like folks they didn't like going into the interview. I would say that number one. I would say number two, something really interesting we do is we have my son Lincoln Failla on Friday a lot.
That's cool.
And he's 12. And someday I'll probably lose a custody battle over his appearances on this show because he is like way out to lunch. But what he does is he comes on, and after like spending a week on TikTok and, Snapchat and all the little kid apps and, the Xbox Live, he likes to come on. He does a segment called Playground Politics, where he talks about politics from the standpoint of a 12-year-old. Now, his positions are informed. Like if you say, if you were to say to Lincoln, Lincoln, we're going to give you $20 for this appearance, he would immediately make a joke like, well, Biden's president, so do I have to give 10% to the big guy? How does this work? Like he knows he has a good handle on political humor. But the better contribution to the segment is that you realize, like in these moments, like people are all consuming politics from different vantage points. Like the one we're used to consuming it from is like, you watch these cable news channels, I watch these cable news channels, and we bludgeon each other. But the people on TikTok are watching a completely different show, because when they watch politics, it's just like, what 6-second clip can I cut into an air supply video to make it look funny? You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And that's what they're doing. It's all like juxtaposition and stuff, but it's such a cool way to consume politics, because you start looking for fun in areas you wouldn't know where to look. And it's actually like the greatest thing, man, when it works. It works pretty well.
There's a lot of the going on.
So much. We do a lot of bits. We do a lot of sketches. I'll give you an example. Like this week, because they recalled Gavin Newsom in California, I'll send you this. We did a really good parody of Hotel California called Recall California. And I wrote the lyrics. Obviously, I have a production team that's like next level studio musicians. And it was, if you know Hotel California, these are the lyrics. It's on a non-moving highway, weed smoke in the air. There's so much pollution, homeless folks everywhere, such an awful existence, can't go outside at night. The crime is heavy, the odds are slim, you won't get in a fight. Junkies sleep in my doorway, I can't escape the smell. This place used to be heaven, but now it's hell. It's Hotel California, same lyrics, and but to hear it done by, I mean it, a Don Henley level of production it's next level funny. It's good. And we did today, because LeBron James was making, kind of headlines for yelling at the cops like an idiot.
Yeah.
We did a really good parody of the Gatorade Like Mike commercial called LeBron. So, that one's like Mike, if I could be like Mike, this one's called LeBron. Please stop your tweets, LeBron. And we got little kids singing, and we got the beat and everything, the bongos. It's really good. Really good. So I think that's my favorite thing, honestly, Fletcher, is bringing a little bit of my comedy background into heavy stories, because it gives us a fun point of entry when we discuss them, as opposed to just like everybody wants to kill everybody.
You said idiot, and that kind of goes to a little segment that Darren and I do every time we do this. We basically want to know what's the most idiotic thing that you've experienced in the last 4 weeks. in your opinion? I mean, I know there's a lot to choose from right now, but
this is next level. All right, I'll start here. I mean,
see that wheel that we were talking about?
No, I love it. No.
Fat guy on wheel.
I mean, I think the easy answer is agreeing to do this interview, but
what the hell?
No, knowing what I now know, no, I kid. In the last 4 weeks, that puts me back at it is almost May, early April. I want to be fair. I want to be inclusive about this as to what I've done with myself. I'm just thinking back on my weekends and what I have decided to do. Because I had a couple of bad ones. Like this Saturday, I wound up in my backyard. Nothing idiotic, but it was me, Kennedy, as you know, Fox Business host Kennedy, my dad, Smoking Joe Failla, and my brother. But we were just having cigars and kind of hanging out. Nothing idiotic happened. But I will grant you that two weeks sooner than that, if that makes sense, idiotic thing that I did is I was upstairs tracking a sketch in my, what would be, I guess, the studio where I do my home recording. And unbeknownst to me, in a monsoon, do you know how the remotes on your car have quick commands? Where, everybody on their car remote has a button that strategically makes your alarm go off for 17 minutes at 2 a.m. Just map. Anyway, through some confluence of events, it was, I think, 3 Saturday nights ago in a monsoon, some quick command on my car lowers all 4 windows, opens the moonroof. And I mean a monsoon, so much so that I caught it 9 hours later. Now, the car works fine. But I need you to understand this. I close my windows because there is so much, I guess, moisture in the car. If I close my windows for a second, the whole car gets the condensation that's on the inside that cannot be killed with a defroster. Do you know what I'm describing?
Yeah.
Where it's like you could wipe it off with your hand, but it's actually physically collected water. You can't wipe it down with a defroster. So I would say that's got to be the win. Because to this day, there's at least 2 inches of water in my car.
So the key question here is, what kind of car?
Oh my God! Remember when you yelled at me the first time we met because I had a Hyundai?
Don't tell me it's the same damn Hyundai.
This is in my wife's Kia. It's a Kia Sorento.
Oh my God! And you have got 2 douchebag cars.
Well, I want you to know this. I have had. I mean, I drove a Crown Vic my whole life. I drove a Ford, but I grew up in a big Ford house. My brother Joey had a 67 Mustang that should have been a 289, but he put a 427 Cobra Jet in it. It was rad. We could drag race it. We've had a lot of cars aren't a thing for me, bud, because it's all mass transit here in New York City. So we own and I live on Long Island, but we call them station cars. And it's basically the vehicle you leave at a train station for 99% of your life.
Yeah.
I own bikes. I ride a lot of bikes. I've probably had 7 different Harleys. I've had a big dog. That was a custom chopper that they make out in Kansas. They make those these Pro Street bikes with fat tires, like the 330s. Yeah. So I've driven a lot of wild bikes, but my car game is not that exciting in parenthood. And I'm sorry to disappoint your audience.
I'm telling you what, man. Maybe that's why you got your butt kicked when you were little. You're like, Daddy, can I have a Hyundai when I get older? Come on.
Wait, what? I didn't quite hear that, but I assume it was a cheap shot at me, and I'll just take it.
Yeah. Oh, my God. We got to work on your car game, man. What the hell?
Well, this is the deal. I didn't want to, when I signed my first Fox contract, as a guy who grew up driving a cab, it was a big deal. And so I didn't want to do the typical first showbiz contract thing, where you go out and just blow every penny of it, assuming there'll be 5 more of these. I have, in order to be successful, and I think everybody in showbiz who is successful has an abusive stage dad living in their head that yells at them at all hours of the day to do things better, to do things right, to be more responsible. I am basically the Jackson 1. The Jackson 5 had Joe Jackson yelling at him all day, fix the choreography. You know what I mean? Somebody don't want dessert, that kind of thing. So I have that in my head everywhere I go. I have an abusive stage dad yelling at me to do things better. And that, honestly, it kept me from getting what I wanted to be. And all I wanted, man, is I wanted a massive, either a GMC, I guess it would be a Yukon or a Chevy Suburban, because I drive to Ohio a lot. It's 661 miles. And I just wanted to do it with some space. You know what I'm saying? And I haven't done it. But that's all I want. I don't even want anything sporty and flashy, because I would just get another bike if I was going to do that. The next cool car I buy would be a 61 Lincoln Continental.
That's a cool
car. You know, I want one of those, like a big old convertible.
What's your typical day like now that you're doing the radio show?
Oh, wow. I get up. If you wanted like the whole production model with like the Tide Pods and everything, is that what you're saying?
yeah.
Everything.
Play by play, baby. Play by play.
I am. So my show is noon to 3. What I find, based on the time I've spent like writing comedy for TV, writing books, writing screenplays, is you're always at your best creatively the minute you roll out of bed, because your brain hasn't been corrupted by the world. Like you haven't interacted with other people and stuff like that. So I'm a big fan of writing in the morning. So I generally will get up at like 5. And I'll kind of sketch out what I think an outline of my show might look like based on the guests I know that are going to be on that day, based on the news stories that I care that are out there, and whatever actually resonates with me, I'll kind of sketch out what I think would be 5 or 6, bullet points that could influence a monologue before we get audio sound and I write sketches and stuff like that. And essentially whatever I think that production model is in the morning, I sketch it out between like 5 and 6. You wouldn't believe this, but I usually work out between like 6 and 6:30, jump on a train, get into Fox, and that's about an hour. And at that point we have a morning editorial meeting that is, the people who work on my show, the news division, the brain room, which are the people who are fact checking everything that's going to come out of my mouth. Like we're held to such a higher standard because we're Fox News and people want to get mad at us. So, I mean, even legal is vetting things that might come out of your mouth. Like it's pretty intense over here, but that's why about, let's say 8 o'clock. So from about 8 to 9, I run through the process of editorial. At 9, I record, it's called a commentary, a 1-minute commentary about something going on in the news that I might have sketched out on the train. And then I have a window from about 9:30 to 11:30, typically where I'm doing a lot of interviews like this to promote the show on like other stations and stuff like that. And I'll do, usually like twice a week, I'll do an 11 o'clock TV hit. Sometimes with like Harris Faulkner on the Faulkner Focus. Sometimes I'll do one of the Fox Nation shows. But between like 11:30 and 12, I'm just kind of going over what's going to happen on my show. And then when it goes live at 12, it's very much jazz. And what I mean by that is I've obviously read up on all of these stories and I know who I'm going to be talking to. But because I have kind of a live performance background doing stand-up, even if I'm like editorializing and monologuing, it's straight jazz. Like I open that mic and do not know what's coming out of my mouth, but you learn to trust your average and it sounds so much more cohesive than it is. You have no idea. But that's actually the production model. And once you bang through those 3 hours of shows, I usually have to do more interviews and stuff like that. And there's, I do TV at night. And then, to just finish on that thought. So a day here will end, if I'm not doing TV, around like, probably like 5:36. Because when I get off the air, I'm always calling in and checking up on the stations that carry the show. I'm always talking to new stations that are checking out the show. And then at some point, if I'm doing TV or I'm doing another Fox show here, like Fox Nation or Fox's Radio, I'm generally here till about 6 every night. Then I go home and it's done. If I'm not doing TV, I'm just done. I'm hanging out with Jenny and my son Lincoln. And oddly enough, you wouldn't know this from listening to the show, I don't drink during the week. I do, I know. Most people just assume I'm getting paid in Meisterbrow. It's not true. But usually on Thursday night, okay, this is when things get interesting. I usually do Kennedy's show on Thursday night, and that's her last show of the week. They're only on Monday through Thursday. So they like to hang out on Thursday night. And I kind of take on this weird attitude. I do something called a West Coast turnaround. And if you're a trucker, they used to do a route in the 70s before we had all of these laws to keep people off the road after too many hours and stuff. Truckers used to do West Coast turnaround. So they would leave New York, drive to California, drop off the rig and turn around and come back without even spending the night. That was a thing. The guy told me about that in my cab. So I started as a cab driver on Thursday nights doing West Coast turnarounds where I would do stand-up and I would get home at like 3 or 4 in the morning, and I'd have to be back on the road driving my cab at like 4:30 in the morning. So I would kind of do like an all-nighter, and I do that a lot with my show now because it's weird, but when you are like patently exhausted, you get to this state of delirium that actually makes you better at everything you're doing because you don't have the energy to second guess any of your instincts. And your instincts are pretty good because you've done the things you're doing so many times that it's not like you're like getting on the air like punch drunk. You're getting on the air as you. You're just not putting as much thought into what comes out of your face. And I find my Friday shows that are always my favorite show to do. And it's not because it's the last one. It's because I'm doing them in an altered mindset it's just affected by just lack of sleep, but it's always fun for me.
That's pretty cool.
I'm giving you a lot, by the way. I mean,
Hey,
if you want my social security number, I feel like you talk about letting you stand behind the magician. I showed you where I put the rabbit. I'm about to give you the rabbit's gender and get myself canceled. This isn't good.
Yeah, you can't go there, man. You can't go there.
Don't ever assume a rabbit's gender. No, that'll end bad.
No, it will definitely end bad. I was in a restaurant the other day, and we were looking at there was an old cartoon in the back playing, and it was like an old Woody Woodpecker cartoon, and I'm like, why in the hell haven't they canceled this yet? Like, they've canceled everything else. Like, why haven't they? I mean, they literally have the word pecker in the title. Like, why haven't they canceled that?
Yeah, he got by a lot, and honestly, the work done to the wood industry. If you just look at the damage he's done to say, if you want to talk about infrastructure, which is such a hot topic right now.
Yeah.
Think of the need. Our infrastructure is largely crumbling because of him, if you really want to be honest.
Maybe he's driving up the lumber prices. Maybe that's the issue.
You're live on the Regional Media Podcast Network. Darren Brown, Fletcher Ford.
I've now been in 57 states. I think one left to go.
What you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard. That sounds so good.
The discussion.
Who is your all-time favorite comedian? Being a comic yourself.
Don't say yourself.
Who's your all-time favorite?
Don't say yourself.
If without offending any of your friends in the comedy world.
That's so funny. Are you familiar with a guy who toured named Kevin Meaney?
A little bit, yeah. Heard his
That's
stuff.
not right. That guy was the big pants guy. He was on like Mr. Show for a while. Kevin Meaney was the first guy I saw do stand-up live. He was opening for Seinfeld at the Broadhurst Theater. If you remember when Seinfeld ended the TV show Seinfeld, he went on a TV tour, a stand-up tour the next night. And the night after Seinfeld ended, I was in a theater because somebody couldn't go, and they gave me and my buddy Vinny tickets, and we went and saw Seinfeld and Kevin Meaney. And Meaney was the first guy I saw walk onto a comedy stage, and he murdered on like such a level that it made you want to not only do comedy, but think you could. And that's the danger of really good stand-up, is it looks so easy that everybody just assumes they know how to do
There's
that.
a lot of bad
comedians. But to get to that place where you can really murder a room full of 300 strangers and feel that euphoria that is, you have to subject yourself to like years of having your soul in a fetal position in front of just rooms of drunk tourists and, angry women smoking cigars in the Bronx, throwing bottles at you, and none of it works. And there is so much pain behind the profit of stand-up comedy. But Meaney was the guy that I loved. Just genuinely my favorite guy. If you wanted somebody everyone's heard of, as a little kid, it was Rodney Dangerfield.
Yeah,
and the reason I loved him is just because his jokes are repeatably funny. And to me, that's like the biggest thing about stand-up is like being able to go see somebody and then telling your friends the next day what the funny thing was.
Yeah, right.
What happens now in the age of Instagram comedy is it's not actually funny. Like, you can't go to your friend and be like, "Oh, you don't understand. They were playing Trump audio and a girl was lip syncing to it." Like, that's not actually funny. but like
Right,
Sarah
yeah.
Cooper has 428 million followers. But it's like the phone changes the context of like what is actually funny. And the people who are the biggest Twitter comedians are generally not funny in person, because Twitter is a shorthand language that you could master if you wanted to, and always learn to say things in a way that's maximized for your audience to get. If you want to remain in like your own authentic voice, you might not work on Twitter, but you'll crush in a comedy club. And like the coolest thing to be is the best guy in the comedy club. So like, you don't care who the headliner is, because the headliner themselves knows, based on being in the room and the true reactions you're getting, they know the truth. And that's always much better than just getting the likes from people you're never going to meet.
So have you ever opened up for any other act or anything like that, and where they got paid more than you and it pissed you off?
Oh, wow. Not pissed me off, but I'll give you one really funny story. Because you get like that part I get, because like in showbiz, especially in stand-up too,
it's name driven, right?
There's something to be said for star power. And what I mean by that is like, I've been on shows with Kevin Hart, per se. And I don't think Kevin Hart's terribly funny, but he has an energy that people are drawn to. And that star power makes people show up anyway, even if they don't think he's that funny. Or maybe they do think he's funny, but it's the star power hoodwinking them. So I get that there are people that are just a better magnetic draw than you at whatever various stage of your career you might be in. But here is a funny story. There's an Italian comic that I'm friends with named Sebastian Maniscalco, who he's just done the Tonight Show 1,000 times. And he's very like, he's like a jazzercise dancer. You know, he's jumping around, hopping around. And everybody in his audience are giant Italian families, because his whole show is like, remember when? You know, you're an Italian, you did this. You're an Italian, you did that. I mean, I make a few of those references in my act. I just don't do an hour of Olive Garden comedy. Anyway, nice guy. Very nice to me. I promise, very nice. And a pro's pro. But on one particular night, I'm opening for him. And after the show, I'm standing downstairs outside the green room, and I run into his wife. And his wife, as we're talking, it's a very pleasant woman. Two drunk dudes come running down the stairs, and they're like, dude, you don't understand, man. You should have been headlining. You're so much funnier than that guy, dude. Dude, you put that guy to shame. So listen to me. Just this is what I do, because I'm a pro, you understand? I don't want him to look bad in front of his wife. He's a headliner. So I said to her, I go, this is how diabolical men are, okay? That guy has no idea you're Sebastian's wife. He assumes I'm trying to hook up with you. And in the guy code, he knew he could help me close the deal if he said that. And she goes, guys really do that? That's crazy. I go, of course they do. A second later, the women's room swings open, and 8 girls run out and go, oh my God, you were so much funnier than Sebastian. And I was like, all right, honey, I tried. I think your husband's great. He's got a great career ahead of him. But it was like, there was just nothing I could do. And honestly, I didn't want the win. I don't want the win, because the truth is, like, if the headliner really does think you're funnier than them, they don't ask you to open for them. You don't get the gig. You dig? Yeah. And that's why what's funny is, like, if you're on the road and you're at a local club, like say I grew up in Levittown, New York. So you're playing the club in Levittown, New York. Okay. The club is going to determine who the opening act is. And for that reason, a lot of times when you go to the local club, the opening act is better than the headliner, because the headliner is like a regional celebrity. It's like Biff from Back to the Future. You know what I mean? It's like Balky from Perfect Strangers, like whoever the heck it is, some like 80s guy with a following. He's great. These are wonderful people. But the point is, the stereotype, if you go to a local club, is that the opener is usually better than the closer. Okay. On the road with a national headliner, like if you're playing theaters, it's never the case, because guys who are big stars make sure they have an opener than them that isn't going to show them up.
Yeah.
You dig? So like if you got a call tomorrow and they were like, hey, you're opening for Sebastian at, Madison Square Garden, you're not that good, what he's telling you. In a weird way. You're good. You're just not, going to blow the room out like him.
You pretty much suck.
So is there anyone else I can alienate in showbiz? Can you throw out some more names? I mean, come on, guys. I feel like we're doing good here.
I'm trying to get you canceled, man, but it's not working.
Oh, buddy.
So we got about 4 minutes left here. Give us the elevator pitch of the show. You know, what can the listeners expect on the regional media stations? And
yes, the elevator pitch for Fox Across America is we're putting your vitamins in your applesauce. If you were a little kid and your parents wanted you to take vitamins, they might have given you a bowl of applesauce, bowl of ice cream, so you ate it without even knowing you took your vitamins. That is the show. We are covering the hardest news, the hardest subjects, like whether it's race, police violence, whatever the hell it is. We're covering it. You're consuming it without even feeling the weight of the topic, because we have a way of distilling information that makes it really easy to drink down. You know, Leo Terrell was on the other day. People probably see him on Hannity all the time. They probably see him all over Fox. And if you watch him on Hannity, he's usually kneecapping some Democrat over some BS racism narrative. And he does that a lot on my show. But when we're talking about race, we're generally like making fun of each other a lot, making the same substantive points, but we're doing it from a standpoint where the vibe is, it's just easy to be around. That's the best thing I could say about our show is you could disagree with every word. You'd find it to be good company, because radio, really quick, is a buddy cop movie. You know, in a buddy cop movie, guy gets into the squad car and he's like, oh, I got a new partner. Let's see if we can get along. And that's what radio is. You get in the car, you turn the dial, and you hear a voice coming out of the speaker. Now you got a new partner. Let's see if we can fight crime together. And I will tell you, I'm a pretty good guy to fight crime with, probably a better guy to create crime with, given my record in my 20s and 30s. But the point is, we're supposed to be fighting it, and I'm on board. Who knows better than fighting crime than a criminal mind like mine? So, hey, who's with me?
Thank you for putting the show together.
No, you guys are great, man. For real, I appreciate you, because the thing we're trying to do with radio is really harness the potential of what radio can be. You know, like people kind of, Rush Limbaugh is the best guy to ever do radio, was so successful that everybody copied him and copied him and copied him till most of the country was listening to a photocopy of a photocopy of a photocopy. Yeah, what Rush was doing was a one of a kind, and it was great. But where everybody thought Rush was successful was because he was, politically a genius. He took bold positions, and he was constantly fighting for conservative values. That is absolutely true. But what made him successful was he was a phenomenal entertainer, playing bits, playing songs. He was funny. He was cool. You couldn't have listened to as much Rush as people did if you didn't think he was cool. And the fact that you guys get what I mean by that, and you get that that's what radio is capable of, like, you guys are doing your stations a favor. Like, I say this all the time. My show is not successful because of my talent, but because of the lack thereof. Like, I am one of you. I'm just a dude hanging out, talking about the news. And it's such a better companion in the car, in the office, or where most of my listeners are in a prison rec yard listening on a transistor radio. But the point is, it's such a better vibe to be around. So thank you, for real. Thank you guys, without having a moment, for just getting, the value of that vibe, because we're going to change the reputation of talk radio from a conservative shout fest to oh, this is a cool place to hang out. And that's what it's going to be. It's Fox Across America will be a cool place to hang out, especially when there's a guest host.
Well, at least it didn't end like The Sopranos, where it just cut to black.
Well, you know how they say the show must go on? Well, they weren't talking about this show.
I think that's a 10.
Let's go with a 10. That's all I'm going to say about it.
Well, that's all there is to it.
At the end of the day, though, loved every minute.
The party is over.
That's it? That's all you got?
Now get the hell out of here.